morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Elizabeth Andrews, Director of the Virginia Coastal Policy Center at William & Mary Law School, and I am the chair of this subcommittee, the Finance Subcommittee, in case you want to make sure you're in the right spot. And we really appreciate you joining us for this first meeting. We only have an hour, so I'm going to get rolling. The first thing we're going to do is have Laura McKay call the roll call to see who's here, to affirm who's here from the subcommittee, make sure we have a quorum. And then I have to read you a pretty long script that's required for electronic meetings, and we'll take a second, then a vote, actually. So a second roll call vote, but it's really to take a vote on the motion. So, Laura.
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I'm sorry I can't start my video. I've already lost screen due to low bandwidth, but hopefully folks can hear me. So, Elizabeth Andrews, you're first on our roll call list.
Present.
Here. Sean Crumlish.
Here. Good to hear me.
Sean, nice to meet you. Yes, we can hear you. Thank you. Clyde Chrisman.
Good morning, Laura. I'm here.
Good morning, Clyde. And Bob Crum.
Good morning. This is Bob Crum. I'm here.
And Troy Hartley.
I'm here. Good morning.
Morning, Troy. Tracy Munyon. Tracy with us? I thought I saw Tracy in the attendees list at one point, but not hearing her.
And I added her as a panelist, but yeah, I don't see her now. She might have dropped out.
Okay.
Dropped out. All right.
Let's see if I can.
All right.
Laura, maybe you should,
Smith.
if her alternate's here.
Lee Hutchinson, are you with us?
I'm just adding
Don't
Lee as a
see him.
panelist right now. I just joined.
Okay, great. I think he's still
So Lee, you should
muted.
be able to unmute yourself now.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Lee. Thanks for joining. Is Tracy going to be unable to join us?
So
I'm
Tracy and
on here
I
now.
are splitting up. I don't know if she's here or not, but I think we're splitting up some of these committees. So I took the finance committee.
Okay, I do see Tracy in the participants list, so it looks like you're both here.
Okay.
I am just been sitting on this first.
Okay, so any
Welcome to you.
any votes that are necessary will be done by Lee then, is that correct, Lee?
Yes, I guess so. Yes.
Thanks.
And Kurt Smith.
Good morning. I'm here.
Good morning, Kurt. And Stephen Ray. Yep. Erin Sutton, I know will be joining us later. She's not here at the moment. Eric Letzinger. Okay, and Richard Klein. Okay, but we do have a quorum. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, so now the moment that everyone's been waiting for, I'm going to read you kind of a long script. Unfortunately, if any of you have been participating in public meetings during the pandemic, you know what's coming. And then after that, I'm going to actually ask if people would like to introduce themselves. Sorry about that. So good morning. I'm going to call this virtual meeting of the Virginia Coastal Resilience Master Planning Framework Technical Advisory Committee Finance Subcommittee to order. Generally, public bodies are prohibited from meeting electronically under the provisions of the Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA. However, emergency language approved by the Governor and the General Assembly in April allows us to move forward with certain restrictions that I will outline now. Before I review those provisions, please let me take a moment to review how this meeting will work. We want to allow for participation by subcommittee members, staff, and members of the public who wish to comment. However, it is essential that we are able to manage the conversation effectively. While the meeting will be open for subcommittee comment, due to the challenges associated with an electronic meeting, we want to allow members of the public to be heard. If you would like to make a comment, please do so in the chat box. Staff will be monitoring the chat box and let us know when someone has submitted a comment. And then we will address your comments as time allows, but at the end of the meeting, we have a public comment period set aside for public comment. Please be patient with us as we work through this. We understand and appreciate the challenges. Again, I have to do this very lengthy intro for the virtual aspects. It's required to be read aloud under Chapter 1289 for all electronic meetings. Chapter 1289 of the 2020 Act of Assembly, also known as the Budget Bill, includes language addressing the ability of public bodies to conduct electronic meetings without the need for quorum being present in a single physical location, i.e. an electronic meeting. This language was submitted as an amendment by the governor and approved by the General Assembly at their April 22nd, 2020 reconvened session. The governor subsequently signed the budget bill and the bill was effective as of July 1st, 2020. The budget bill allows public bodies to hold electronic meetings when the governor has declared a state of emergency pursuant to section 44-146.17 if, quote, 1, the nature of the declared emergency makes it impracticable or unsafe for the public body or governing board to assemble in a single location. 2, the purpose of the meeting is to discuss or transact the business statutorily required or necessary to continue operations of the public body and the discharge of its lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. Section 4-0.01G. The budget bill also has language regarding recordings and transcriptions of electronic meetings. Please be advised that this meeting is being recorded. This recording will be available to the public through the Secretary of Natural Resources website. The comments in the chat room will also be preserved as a public record. The official minutes of this meeting will be drafted and posted in accordance with regular procedures. The minutes will also include the type of electronic communication means by which this meeting is being held, WebEx. The budget bill does not allow the subcommittee to hold an electronic meeting to discuss or transact business for any purpose. Rather, they may do so as long as the agenda items that the public body plans to take up are A, statutorily required, or B, necessary to continue operations and discharge lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. It is the committee's responsibility to determine whether the nature of the declared emergency makes it impracticable or unsafe for the public body or governing board to assemble in a single location. At the conclusion of these remarks, I will ask for a motion for the subcommittee to make this determination. If that motion fails, this electronic meeting will end at that point. The budget bill requires compliance with the provisions of section 2.2-3708.2 of the Code of Virginia. Therefore, in accordance with section 2.2-3708.2 D2, public bodies must include a telephone number that may be used to notify the public body of any interruption in the telephonic or video broadcast of this meeting. In the event that a disruption occurs, participants should contact Nick Mead, nick.mead, M-E-A-D, at deq.virginia.gov, or at the phone number 804-317-3638. And I'm going to ask Nick if you could post that information in the chat box. That would be very helpful. Thank you. Additionally, if there's an interruption in the broadcast, the meeting must be suspended until public access is restored. The provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act not addressed by the budget bill remain in effect. So I am going to ask for a motion that the nature of the declared emergency makes it impracticable or unsafe for the public body or governing board to assemble in a single location, so we will proceed electronically.
So moved.
That was Dr. Troy Hartley. Thank you. Does anyone second that motion?
Clyde Crispin, I'll second.
Thank you, Clyde. And now, Laura, if you could call the roll for the vote on the motion.
Yes. Elizabeth Andrews.
Aye.
Sean Crumler.
Aye.
Aye.
Bob Crum.
Yes.
Aye.
Lee Hutchinson.
Aye.
Bert Smith.
Aye.
All right, assuming that Stephen Murray, Aaron Sutton, Eric Letzinger, and Richard Klein have not joined, I think we have a quorum for continuing.
Aaron Sutton's on.
Oh, hello, Aaron. Great.
Great. Hi, Aaron.
Are you voting aye to continue?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all for your patience as we went through that. Since this is the first meeting of our subcommittee, I hate to torture you with another roll call, but I would love for each person to say who they are, what agency or organization they're with, and I would love it if you could add what you think that you can bring to this discussion about finance for our Coastal Resilience Master Plan. So I guess we could start. I'll just go down Laura's list. Sean, is Sean Crumlish able to talk?
Yes.
Hi.
My name is Sean Crumlish with Virginia Resources Authority. Peter DeLama will most likely be participating in this committee more frequently than I am. Main thing is Virginia Resources Authority. We finance mainly local government infrastructure, a lot of water and sewer, but also public safety buildings, et cetera, stormwater. So our expert is knowledge of the municipal bond market. We do issue bonds that we are then turning around and lending those funds to local governments. We have been monitoring for the last several years innovations in the municipal bond space, such as green bonds and environmental impact bonds. And also we could bring the other finance participants' knowledge. We have relationships with underwriters, which would be the major banks such as JP Morgan, Bank of America, et cetera. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Clyde.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm Clyde Christman. I'm the director of the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation. And while many of you know us for our award-winning state parks and natural heritage program, a lot of folks don't know that we also operate the Dam Safety and Floodplain Management Program in Virginia. So we have a variety of funding in flood-related and flood control areas, including our existing dam safety fund that Sean mentioned, which we partner with the RA, as well as we have some meager funding now for flood prevention. The nice thing is that starting within the next couple of months, we're going to be getting 45% of the funding that comes to the Community Flood Preparedness Fund from the Reggie auctions. And while we're anxiously waiting to see how much money that's going to be, we are in the process now. We have grant guidelines that were developed. We put out for public comment. We're in the process now of working on those public comments and have the final guidelines so that hopefully once the Reggie money starts flowing in, I believe the auction is set for about a week and a half from now. And so we'll be able to finally have some substantial resources that we'll be able to provide for communities to help with flood control. And as Sean, we work very closely with the VRA. The way these funds work is once they come to us, we transfer them and put them into the Virginia Resources Authority, and then we'll go through the process to award grants. And then Sean gets the check for us. So that's our biggest role in this. But we also, the other thing that's really important to this is that we work with FEMA to help to administer the National Flood Insurance Program. And our biggest goal there is working with communities in the community rating system to make sure that the communities are taking advantage. And I hope that through some of this master plan, some of the work we're doing, we're able to help to identify communities that can enhance their community rating system. That has the net effect of reducing flood insurance premiums for all the citizens in the community. So happy to be part of the financing subcommittee here. And, look forward to lots of work ahead.
Great. Thank you. Bob.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Bob Crum. I'm the Executive Director of the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission and also the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization. Our role here in the Hampton Roads region is to work with the 17 local governments on regional initiatives, and it goes without saying that issues of sea level rise, the impact of climate change is a big part of our program in terms of coordinating and working with our local governments to get alignment around important approaches to address this challenge. What motivated me to become involved with this findings subcommittee, and it was a tough choice because there were so many good subcommittees, but I'm interested in exploring whether or not we could replicate at Hampton Roads what we've done to fund transportation. And could we broaden our thinking to do the same thing with issues related to coastal resiliency and sea level rise? Here in Hampton Roads, we have an extra gas tax in our region and an extra sales and use tax in our region. And it's money we've used to finance the construction of well over $5 billion of regional transportation improvements in our region. Just as a little barometer, if I may, Elizabeth, less than 1% increase in the regional sales and use tax in Hampton Roads generates anywhere from $150 to $170 million per year. So I'm excited to discuss whether or not, following that same model, that we have the proof of concept, it's more related to transportation. Could we replicate that model in helping finance and advance some really important projects here in our region? And Elizabeth, as we go on, I can share with people, what those projects look like, what the costs are. But we're talking about billions with a B, as you know. So thank you. I look forward to working with you.
Terrific. Thank you. Just so you know, just in the spirit of transparency, I'm writing words next to each of your names about, like I won't call Bob Mr. Tax, but he's got it. He's going to come and talk to us about taxes. And Sean or Peter, you're going to come and talk to us about bonds. I'm writing words next to y'all. Thank you. Troy.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So I'm Troy Hartley. I am the director of Virginia Sea Grant 7 University Coalition. I'm headquartered at the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, but all the R1 institutions are part of our organization. In this particular context, I think Sea Grant has a lot of experience in federal-state partnership. So while our federal funding comes from NOAA, we've been building partnerships with HUD's Community Development Block Grant Program and some of the programs within Homeland Security, including some things beyond FEMA. And we have a lot of experiences in public-private partnership approaches, leveraging federal dollar, state dollar, private sector dollar, and foundation dollar simultaneously for individual projects as well as program areas. Maybe can't quite get to the billion, no taxation, but definitely creativity in partnership approaches.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, Lee.
Good morning. So I'm with Department of Housing Community Development. I, along with Tracy, work on the resiliency team. We have several grants focused on resilient efforts, and then of course DHCD has many grants focused on community development, housing, infrastructure, energy conservation. We have lots of irons in the fire, so hopefully we can have a good perspective, from a grant standpoint, and hope you guys work on some things.
Thank you. Kurt.
Good morning, everybody. Kurt Smith, Executive Director of the Peninsula Planning District Commission. We administer a Living Shoreline Revolving Loan Fund. We have done that for several years. We also administer septic repair revolving loan funds, and these incentives are being built into our incentivized coastal resilience marketplace that we believe to be the first of its kind in the nation. That was launched during 2020. That's the Peninsula Fight the Flood program. It's like I said, an incentivized marketplace where we are able to our property owners here in rural coastal Virginia to grants and loans and expected in a management manner. So be happy to share more about that, but we're very active in that space. And our focus is primarily on private property, being that 99% of our shoreline areas are private.
Right. Thank you, Kurt. Okay. And I believe Stephen Murray is still not with us, right, Laura? And same with Eric Letzinger with Quantified Ventures. He'll be, I know that Eric can talk about various innovative funding mechanisms that they have done, environmental impact bonds, et cetera. And the Corps of Engineers, Richard Klein, can talk about core funding, Stephen Murray about economic development funding. So that leaves us with Aaron. Aaron, could you introduce yourself and just talk about what you bring to the table for the Finance Subcommittee, please?
So my name is Erin Sutton. I'm the Chief Deputy State Coordinator for the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. Some of you on this may know more familiar that I was the emergency manager for the city of Virginia Beach. And so kind of bring a little bit of that and then BDEM obviously to the table. BDEM oversees the state mitigation. We have the State Hazard Mitigation Officer in the Virginia Department of Emergency Management and manage hazard mitigation funding. And the newest two that I'm still getting my head around is this BRIC funding, building resilience. Yeah, BRIC funding. I got
communities. Yeah.
Thank you. And so we are about 600 million this go around, and we're looking at what they actually are going to do next year. It could be an unbelievable amount of money because it's set aside, a percentage set aside, and so it's some opportunities. Obviously, there are rules that come along with the hazard mitigation funding, but as it relates to locality projects and programs, it could be a tremendous opportunity. A lot of our smaller localities don't have the capacity to build projects, and there may be an opportunity for us to help and provide guidance for those that are under-resourced in those localities. And with Virginia Beach, we've done a lot of the home elevation programs, which is not the best program, but a lot of experience in dealing with the hazard mitigation program from the challenges.
Thank you. All right. So, Sean, I got a note from Nick that Peter has joined us. So are you off the hook or will you continue to speak on behalf of the RA?
I will stay in the meeting, but we'll let Peter take any kind of, if there's any text.
And Peter noted that he may not be able to connect with his camera, so I get that. So welcome. Peter, did you want to say anything by way of welcome?
Yeah, I just like to say good morning. Program, and we're also involved in community work prevention funds, so we're looking forward to working on that. And then we also have a municipal pool that funds prevention and dam safety type projects. So there are a number of things that are always that we're looking forward to being on this subcommittee to be able to offer the insight that we can talk about the financing options.
Peter, I'm sorry, I'm having real difficulty hearing you. I don't know if anybody else could hear you better than I, but that was very blurry. And so maybe you could just type a little bit in the chat box, a little, and we can read that.
Sure, I'll do that.
Thank you. And so one quick thing, Nick, is I don't have the ability to share my screen. It looks like it's not lit up. You need to give me that ability, I think. So one last. Someone saying something to me? Is that Nick? No?
Yeah, I was just can't do.
Thank you. All right. And last piece of housekeeping is that I'm seeking a volunteer to be our secretary for this meeting and take notes. I've been taking notes so far. Thank you, Nick. But it will be hard as I'm doing this PowerPoint presentation for me to track people's comments. So who would like to be a saint for the day and volunteer to take notes for this part of the meeting? They don't have much staff to staff these in the administration, as you know. So that's why it's done a little differently than the board meetings you might be used to, where there's always a designated person to do that. Is there somebody who'd be willing to do that?
I'm happy to help Elizabeth.
Thank you, Kurt. You're the king for the day. You're crowned officially. Your set of free steak knives will be in the mail. Okay, thank you. So with that, we have Justin Bell with us today, I believe. Nick, is he here and able to speak? Is he unmuted?
Not see Justin in the attendee list.
Yeah, he has not joined.
All right, well, I'm going to move to the next thing. And Laura, would you mind dropping him a note to remind him about this, since I think you've corresponded with him before, right? So, thank you. All right, we're going to get rolling. And I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Everybody keep your fingers crossed that this works. This is the guinea pig moment. Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
The world didn't blow up. Awesome. Okay. All right. So first I wanted to reiterate to everyone the goal that we've been given, or actually it's two goals. Our mission is to develop a financing strategy that recommends how to leverage and align existing resilience revenue streams to maximize impact. We've just heard how a number of the members of the subcommittee will be very handy with that. And how to create or tap into new revenue or financing sources. Again, we heard from a number of people who can help with that as well. And one thing that, as we go through this little discussion, I would love for you to think about is who else should be on this subcommittee? Is there someone else you could think of who would be helpful to our mission? All right, so for the first prong of that, aligning existing revenue streams, here are just some examples. The Virginia Community Flood Preparedness Fund that Clyde Chrisman mentioned, administered by DCR. We are all excited about that. The Dam Safety Flood Prevention and Protection Assistance Fund, also staffed by DCR. And the Conservation Small Watersheds Flood Control and Area Development Fund, and Water Quality Improvement Fund funding for non-point sources. I put that in with a question mark to see if we can think outside the box a little bit about that and see if that might be helpful. Federal grants, such as the BRIC program that Aaron mentioned. That's just an example of some of the things that are out there today, that how can we figure out how to align them and get the most bang for our buck. For new revenue or financing sources, some examples would be bonds. Sean mentioned that they've been looking at environmental impact bonds and municipal bonds, but there also are resilience bonds and catastrophe bonds out there that we could look into. For insurance, there's parametric insurance. Kurt can help us with that in the sense that Louis Lawrence looked at an innovative way to use parametric insurance in case of storms, wiping out living shorelines that they've invested in, for example. Private flood insurance, there's some growth in that market. Ann Phillips and I have been talking to some representatives in the insurance industry about that, so that could be an alternative. And then, of course, improving the community rating system. SCORE, as Clyde mentioned, reduces the NFIP flood insurance rates for people. That's another alternative. One thing that we could talk about is bundling benefits to reduce risk and to increase interest in investing in things. For example, wetlands provide water quality, filtration, nutrient reduction, carbon sequestration, and flood buffers. So how can we be innovative in our bundling of benefits with different tools? Fees and taxes, that has Bob Crum written all over it now that I've learned how much he knows about that. There are charities out there that are providing some funding for resilience measures, TNC, Natural Resources Defense Council. So there are all kinds of things that we could look at and consider to see if they would be of benefit to the Commonwealth as we develop our master plan. And thank you to Laura McKay for providing me with this slide. It's a picture of their Coastal Virginia Resiliency Database, the funding database that's been pulled together under a CZM grant by Wetlands Watch. We can use this as a tool too during our discussions. And as you can see, it talks about the Chesapeake Bay Restoration Fund and Chesapeake Bay Trust funding through their Green Streets, Green Towns, and Green Jobs grants program, Chesapeake Research Consortium, CZM funding, DCR, DEQ, the SLAF fund. So there are all kinds of alternatives available, and this tool might be helpful to us just to see a pretty comprehensive list of what's out there. And I think that Laura will make that available to us during the process. So again, first question is, as you're thinking about this and you're looking at our mission, what else do we need? Who else do we need to have on this subcommittee? And I would add, what else do we need to cover that wasn't in that? That was just an example list. And we need to set our monthly meeting dates. So I'm assuming that I can stop sharing by hitting the red stop button. Yay, I see your faces. That's a good sign. I teach on Zoom. This is new. We're learning WebEx as we go. All right, so does anyone have any thoughts that they want to add about who? I think I saw Bob write a note while I was doing PowerPoint.
Yeah, Elizabeth, this is Clyde, and I want to echo Bob's suggestion is it probably would behoove us to maybe consider asking some of the Secretary of Finance to appoint one of their deputies or somebody from DPB to be involved in this, because we, pretty much have to go through them for, all the budget adjustments and whatnot that will be necessary to make some of this happen. So I think that's a good idea, good suggestion.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else have other suggestions to round out the committee? I think that we're going to try to perhaps get someone from the Virginia Department of Transportation as another person. If anyone has suggestions for that, please send them over. I just sent a few to Ann this morning, so I'm hoping others will have contacts there too. So that would be 2 more. Anyone else?
We just got
Elizabeth,
a comment from, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, this is Troy. Elizabeth, there's a faculty member at UVA in the McIntyre School of Commerce who's done a lot on public financing, innovative public financing approaches, Mark White.
Yeah.
EPA has funded these environmental finance centers, one at Maryland, one at North Carolina, that might have some folks as well. They may be people that could come and give us insights. They don't necessarily have to be committee members.
Right. I was thinking about asking one or both of them to come, Troy, to do presentations. And that brings up, ask if you have other suggestions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Ann Phillips or to whom I should say is on this call, and wave to everyone. Ann, everyone knows Ann, the world knows Ann. And also to write them in the chat box if you have suggestions. But I was going to suggest that maybe we break this down. We can either have a group 1 and a group 2, a thing 1 and a thing 2, like cat in the hat, for the 2 missions of the subcommittee, and break down to subgroups to deal with these issues. Or we can just keep it as a committee as a whole, but I would like to assign, we're gonna have monthly meetings, that's what the Secretary's office has asked us to do. And I'd like to assign for a few months, one meeting could be all about bond funding. And that could be municipal bonds and environmental impact bonds and CAP bonds and resilience bonds. We could have one about obviously existing funding, whatever's here with us today, and that may need to be broken down into 2 because federal and state grants, there are quite a few out there to cover. So our normal meetings probably would be an hour and a half. I had to limit this to 1 hour because there's actually another subcommittee that's scheduled at 11 and we didn't want to overlap. And then also, so bonds and then insurance and existing revenue streams in the Commonwealth, fees and taxes also. So what do you all think of that plan? Does someone have a suggestion to do it another way other than dedicate a monthly meeting to each topic and then compile all the information that we have after that, 4 months or whatever, and apply it with the help of this consultant that the administration is hiring to support the master plan process, to take what comes out of the projects subcommittee, which I believe Louis Lawrence is the chair, and try to cross-analyze. Take the projects they're recommending. They'll have had some time to develop some over the next 4 or 5 months, and then the contractor can help us cross-pollinate and take these tools that we are recommending and see which ones would work best with their projects. So does anyone have thoughts about that?
Elizabeth, it's Laura. Just want to let you know that Justin Bell has joined by phone, and Nick is going to unmute him on the phone.
Thank you. And hello, Justin. Tell you what, Justin, do you mind if I just see if there's an answer from folks on the subcommittee on this one question, and then we'll turn to you?
That makes sense to me.
Thanks, Justin. Okay. So as I was saying, everyone, and if you have any questions about schedule for the project subcommittee or the contractor, then please, let's ask Ann, not me, because I don't know. But that I had run that schedule by her. It does sound like it would work with the others. So what do you all think?
Elizabeth, this is Clyde. I sort of think that that monthly schedule works fine. And as a matter of fact, I think it would be very timely if you'd like to consider us. We should have the guidelines ready to go by a next meeting for the Community Flood Preparedness Fund. And relevant to this topic is the statute actually talks about giving preference to studies of regional or statewide significance. And so if you'd like, I could arrange to have Russ Baxter and his staff be prepared, because I think that's, because shortly after that, we'll be having probably within a month or two, things start to roll in, but I think that would be a very timely topic for the next meeting.
That would be awesome. Thank you, Clyde. Always welcome, Russ. So how much time do you think that would take, though, Clyde, in the sense that if he provides an overview and subcommittee members ask questions, do we have time in an hour-and-a-half meeting to schedule a second presentation on other things?
I would think so. I think he could, cover the bones, and we could have a good, healthy question and answer probably in a half an hour. And then, maybe we need to allow time for people to submit written questions and stuff too. If we, I think we could probably, keep that to a half an hour.
And then do you think we could make it the DCR show and somebody on your staff talks about the dam safety fund as well?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And I don't think that would take that long, but maybe that would be coordinated with you all and with Sean and Peter. I don't know how you want to handle that.
Yeah, sure. That'd be helpful because we can coordinate with VRA and we can sort of explain, the process. We actually modeled the statute for the Community Flood Preparedness Fund is modeled after the dam safety. And so the interaction is the same, so people can know exactly how that process works.
Great. Peter, would you be willing to talk to Clyde about that?
Yes.
Now, this is actually a perfect opportunity to call on Justin. I'm showing my old stripes here, sorry, but you can't have 3 or more talking to each other about things without violating FOIA. And if we do break down into groups 1 and 2, we're going to need to have at least 4 members in each, but you all, I'm sure, have seen the FOIA and COIA training because it was offered on a Friday a couple weeks ago, and also people like me that couldn't make it watched the video. I know Laura McKay sent the link out to you all. So Justin, thank you for joining us. Would you like to cover just a couple of the high points of that and ask folks if they have questions?
That works for me. Let me start off by saying, if anybody still has any questions, we should probably lead off with those. So does anyone have any questions before we kind of hit the high points? I don't think I'm hearing anything from the crowd here, which I don't know if it's a good sign or a bad sign, but we're going to take it as a good sign. Let me start off by saying I've been doing this for 6 years now, and about every month to month and a half, I feel like I learn something new about either FOIA or COIA. And so it's okay if you don't get it all 100%. It's okay if you feel like, man, this is a lot. This guy threw so much at me in an hour of training or whatever. Like, it's a complex deal to deal with. So don't be overwhelmed. It's okay. Sometimes it takes you hearing it a couple times to really get what it means and to really get the context of what's going on. In service of that, let me remind everyone that you have access to the FOIA Council and the COIA Council. And in the case of the FOIA Council, they have an entire database of searchable advisory opinions. So you can, if you're not clear on what a particular statute means or what a term means, or you have something going on in a subcommittee, you want to just kind of, you can't quite articulate a question, but you want to see it discussed, you can go on that database and search those opinions and kind of see them discussed in more detail. And then I'll give you a better idea, and maybe from there you can form the question better if you haven't taken away the answer that you're looking for at that point. So you can also have similar discussions with the FOIA Council. I don't want to say that they're somehow lesser, just I think it's a little easier to navigate the FOIA Council's website. Maybe that's just a personal preference. In terms of COIA, I'm not really sure what I can say besides, by the nature of this board, I don't think the likelihood of you running into a COIA violation is high, but you need to be aware regardless. You need to be aware of things like gifts. You need to be aware of things like undue influence, the appearance of undue influence, improper contracts and transactions. Let me just say, if you have any inkling that something might be wrong, or there might be a weird connection between you and a transaction or a contract that your committee or subcommittee is going to go through, or even just you're going to consider, please bring it up with your staff from the governor's office, and they can vet it properly and make sure that either you're disqualifying yourself from those considerations, or that you're or you file the right disclosure form, or whatever else needs to happen to make sure that everything's okay. So I just want to just be proactive, be alert. You can't really fix things after the fact. You gotta kind of identify it beforehand and then move forward. Okay. That's probably all I'm going to say on COIA. I'll pause there on COIA and say, does anybody have any questions on COIA there?
Good job, Justin. No questions. Well done.
Yes, no kidding. So how about some FOIA talk? We'll take the last 15 minutes or so, and we'll just talk COIA if that's okay with everyone. Really, FOIA is about openness in regards to meetings and in regards to records. I really do recommend, in terms of records, just understand that while you're working for TAC, while you're doing your work for TAC, everything that you have that can be identified either on a computer or in an inbox or in a folder somewhere, that is your work or given to you for your work, is going to be a public record. Be alert of that. I don't want that to have a chilling effect on what you do, but I want you to be aware of of how things are going to operate. I want you to be aware of what that might mean, and I don't want you to unintentionally make something a public record that you didn't mean to. I don't want you to unintentionally handle something that you didn't mean to handle. So just be alert, be aware. There will come a time when you're working with somebody from the public who's done research or a report that you want to use. You've got to tell them, look, if you give me this to have, if you give me a copy of your data set, your research, whatever, there's a chance it might become public. So you need to tell people about that beforehand. And the people you might need to tell are your staff in the governor's office, just in case there is a way to protect the data. Maybe someone is unwilling to share data because it's not a finished peer-reviewed study, or something of that nature. That doesn't mean that it's automatically going to be released to the public. There's steps we can take, but we have to know about them beforehand to make the plans, work on the front end, make things possible on the back end. But once it's kind of out there, once it's happened, there's no real way to retract it. I do advise that you set up a second email account just for your work as part of this public body. It's a good way to get yourself in the mindset, the proper mindset of what it means to be in one of these public-facing appointed members of a public body. In terms of meetings, I heard we discussed you don't want subcommittees that are 3 or less. You want that magic number to be 4, so you can always have a pair of people work together. Just know that whenever there's a discussion of public business between 3 or more people, you could be having something that needs to include the public. So just be aware of that. You know, you want to make sure that we're not having improper discussions. You want to make sure you're not having a conference call that you didn't include the public on, you didn't notify the public on. We want to make sure that we're as open to the public as we can be, as clear to the public, inclusive of the public as we can be. It's a lot to think about, but it's not. Once you kind of get how it's supposed to operate, it's not that overwhelming. It's a set of rules of what steps you must take in order to operate, not a set of rules of things you cannot do. If you think about it that way, it's probably a little easier to operate. Pause there. Anybody?
Okay.
I don't hear anything.
Is everybody scared now like you should be? Don't be talking on the side too much. That's the main thing. And no more than 2, right? Like don't get a big group email going, right?
That's right. You want to keep it in pairs if you have to. You want to use the blind copy to make sure you don't accidentally trigger a mass discussion of something. You want to again, just be careful, be thoughtful. You'll be just fine.
Thank you, Justin. And if anybody does have information you think it would be helpful for the whole group to hear, then you can either contact me to get it on the agenda for a meeting, or you can send it to Laura McKay and ask her to send it to the entire group. That's a safer way to go, and she can BCC, as Justin said. Great. All right. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate you taking the time.
Sure.
And you're welcome to stay if you want to hear about resilience, but otherwise we'll let you off the hook.
I've got another one coming up at 11, so I got to run.
So yeah, thanks.
Good luck, everybody.
Thank you. I do want to note that Nick added that someone had texted or chatted him that the Virginia Pace Authority might be another good member. So while Justin was talking, so that tells you how much thought process I put into it. But while Justin was talking, I took down some notes. And what do you all think of this? It might be simplest just to go ahead and designate the meetings when we cover what topics. If we do March, as Clyde said, we'll have Russ Baxter come and talk about the Community Flood Preparedness Fund. Someone else talk about the Dam Safety Fund, unless Russ can cover that too. I would suggest we also do the funding programs through DEQ. I don't know, Peter, Sean, if that should be you all addressing that, or do I need to talk to Karen at DEQ and ask her? What do you all think?
I think both. That's pretty reasonable.
Okay. And so that would be then essentially 3 presentations, right? Community Flood Preparedness Fund, Dam Safety Fund, anything else DCR wants to say, and then existing DEQ funding programs, and have Karen at DEQ and VRA talk about it. In April, we could change this around however you all want to. But in April, we could do bonds and have Eric from Quantified Ventures speak, and Sean or Peter talk about their experience in research. Have Hampton maybe talk about the green bond that they're doing, because they're actually the ones that pushed in Virginia to have this kind of an environmental impact bond. So that could be April. May could be federal grants. We could have Aaron from VDEC or appointee speak. We could have housing. We could have Lee or Tracy speak. And we could have the Corps of Engineers, because that's a form of federal funding that's different from the grant programs. So we could ask Mr. Knight to speak on that. June, we could do insurance, and maybe I was thinking, Kurt, we could have you or Louis be part of that discussion. I could bring in the company that does the parametric insurance, but you all could also talk about revolving loan funds at the regional scale in that meeting. What do you think?
Sure, we can do that. I think that's a good idea.
Okay. You were busy taking notes. You couldn't answer. And then, let's see, that would get us to July. We could do fees, taxes, and case. And we could have Bob, somebody that you would like to speak to that maybe, and talk about your positive history in the Hampton Roads region with that. And then maybe Abby from the Virginia Pace Authority could come and talk to us about CPACE funding. What do we want to look at that? So if we cover Community Flood Preparedness Fund, Dam Safety Fund, DEQ funding, we cover federal grants at the core, we cover bonds, we cover insurance, and we cover fees, taxes, and CPACE. Is there anything we're missing in that list that you all want to hear about? And the goal, by the way, for everyone that I've just recruited in one foul swoop to talk about these things, the goal would be to talk about them and the lessons learned and how could they be applied in Virginia, right? Add, as I always tell my law students, add some analysis to it too, so that it's not just this is what we've done, but it could possibly be used for other things. Would be very helpful. So does that concept sound good? And does that schedule sound good to everyone?
Elizabeth, the schedule sounds good to me. I guess sort of a question I have, and I see Admiral Phillips on there too. This may be somewhat for her, but I'm just sort of curious in terms of the bigger picture of how the various subcommittees, what's our schedule like? What's our, what's our end goal? What's the process, the interaction with the full TAC? Maybe if Ann could just give us a few moments of that big picture.
Great.
So, good morning, everyone. And again, thanks to all of you for your time for this subcommittee today and in the future. As we're moving forward with this, the intent is that the missing link right at the moment is that we don't have the contractor on board yet. But in the grander scheme of things, the subcommittees are advising the Commonwealth through the Technical Advisory Committee on steps it should take in the topic areas they are focused on. And the contractor is also working for the Commonwealth to provide additional data to help support the advice that the subcommittees are giving to the Commonwealth in the context of how we should move forward with this program. The subcommittee chairs all have a very rough Gantt chart that was sent to them on February 5th that shows where the milestones that are in the RFP for the contractor fall. Kind of first and foremost is doing this full coastal assessment to understand where we have critical and vulnerable infrastructure and then looking at the programs that we've collected and that the contractor will be helping with, identifying, where we have programs that fit what we think is most critical and most vulnerable the soonest and where we do not. And then under a prioritization process, trying to work out which the prioritization process subcommittee will begin to develop with assistance from the contractor, trying to figure out which are the things that we should try to target as a Commonwealth first. And then how do we pay for those things? So what federal grants could be applied? How could the Virginia Community Flood Preparedness Fund, if the project would apply or be considered under that circumstance, be leveraged to assist? Are there other grant programs we should be aligning with to try to set up a series of steps to get to some projects would be probably pretty close to being ready to go, especially natural and nature-based feature kinds of things. Other things, hardscape, more substantial work, would need a stepped, I would say, a phased process. What do we need to do? Do the planning, do the engineering design, and start working through how to get to actually accomplishing something. So I could envision there'd be differing timelines for different kinds of projects. You could create a large living shoreline fairly quickly and maybe be executing and through permitting in 18 months or so, maybe less. But if you're going to look at something more substantial, like many of the projects that we know already exist in Hampton Roads recommended through the joint land use study or as a part of Army Corps work, those are much longer term because there's a lot more money involved and much more finite engineering design, and it will take longer to get there. So all this will be coming together over the course of the summer. But I think the work that you're doing and the plan Elizabeth has laid out to start to understand what's there and get the people with the knowledge and the technical expertise in the room who can explain to you how these things need to fit together, then you'll be prepared to make recommendations as we get to, okay, here's areas we need to focus on, here's projects that exist or don't exist, here's how we're going to prioritize what we know of or what we need to add, and here's how we're going to start to pay for it and lay out a timeline and a process by which we can move forward. So your work is focusing on bringing all those things to the table, so that we can start to pull together a broad plan rather than one locality, one planning district, one agency at a time, which is how we've been doing things, because that's the only way we have been able to do things. So I think the suggestions to add somebody from finance and DPB are that's very good. They need to be a part of this and help describe the art of the possible. Virginia Pace is probably good too. They certainly should come talk to your subcommittee. They may want to continue to be a part of it. There's some options and opportunities there. We have CPACE-R, Pace for Resilience. You just have to have somebody figure out how to make it work. That's it's authorized in code under the General Assembly. And certainly the environmental, Elizabeth and I have dabbled with the environmental finance centers, particularly the Maryland one. They've done some excellent work. They did a great analysis for the city of Annapolis. Among other things, the question is, what do we need them to do, and how do we get? You have to pay them, so how do we pay them to do it? But that's an option. I know they've done some work for the Middle Peninsula also in the past, so there's some potential assistance there, and that's a part of the contract. I mean, the offerer is supposed to be helping us with economic analysis, and of all of the proposals included that. So. So we're getting there. We're making progress in that RFP process. We're just not. We thought we'd be hoped. Hope is not a course of action, but a timeline had us finished by the end of this month. We're not quite there, but we are moving along, and so that's all good.
Thank you. All right, I see we're nearing the 0 hour here, so we will have that proposed schedule in the minutes that are sent out to you. Thank you, Kurt. And I will help too with my sloppy notes. And I would appreciate it if you do have reactions. We're going to want to hear them, I guess, at the March meeting, because the March meeting we're set. Thank you, Clyde, for stepping forward. Hooray. And we'll be reaching out. I'll be reaching out to you, Clyde, and also to the VRA folks. I do want to set aside time for the public comment period. Nick and Laura, do we have any public comments?
We do have one person listening, but I don't know if they have any comments they'd like to make.
Okay.
I can unmute them and we can see, but also Bob Crum currently has his hand raised.
Great, thank you, Bob.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. I'm sorry, I should have got to you sooner. First off, Elizabeth, I completely support what you've outlined. I think that's a great set of topics. I know I'm certainly going to learn a lot from that. I would make two recommendations. The first is, I think this subcommittee is of a manageable size, yet provides a diversity of perspectives that I feel like we would benefit, rather than creating subcommittees of the subcommittee, just keeping our group together, because I think it's that cross-connect collaboration that I know Admiral Phillips has been working hard on. And I'm really looking forward to discussing these programs and then learning everybody's perspective and what they can add to that conversation. So that would be my first recommendation. And it also, pertaining to our FOIA conversation, relieves some of that, right? So,
well, exactly.
So we say together as a subcommittee, I really think would benefit, because I think our group's of a nice, small nature that would benefit. And listening to Admiral Phillips speak, there's another item I might recommend, that just one addition to your list, Elizabeth. I think it would be helpful, maybe the consultant could help us with this, if we could have a conversation of what's worked in other places, right? Related to financing. And perhaps the consult. So, by this summer, we're going to get ourselves all educated on all the state and federal funding programs. If the capstone could be some conversation with the consultant about what is worked in, New Orleans or Texas or other places, that might be helpful to us in terms of how we form our recommendations. So I just have those thoughts out there if that makes any sense.
Thank you, Bob. That makes a lot of sense. Frankly, as I was jotting down this schedule just spontaneously, I was thinking the same thing. We don't need subcommittees, and that's just one more thing to track on, both FOIA and my end and everything else. So thank you. And maybe August would be the time frame when we're done with all of these individual topics. Would that be okay to have the contractor come and give a presentation then on what's worked of all these different concepts? Or do you think sooner?
Admiral Phillips, I just wonder how it fits into the bigger picture of deadline and how that might work. So maybe Admiral Phillips could help us.
Well, so that's a great question, Bob. And of course, some of it's going to depend on what, this is one of the 3 things I learned in department head school in the Navy: make a plan so you can change it. And we're almost certain that whatever plan we've laid out for the contractor will have to be modified somewhat as we all kinds of factors, as you are well aware, come into play there. So I would say that, so the first thing we want to do when we get this company on board is that they go over their schedule and their tasking with the full TAC. So the TAC understands, so everybody hears from them, here's what we're doing, here's when we think we're doing it. That's going to drive us to make some modifications. But I would think that early on, you would want to have their economic analysis people come talk to you about what they're doing, and then you ask them questions. So whether that's a part of a meeting in April or May, I think that's worth doing in addition to what you have on the schedule, because right from the start, they need to know what you're focusing on, and you need to know, how they're going to approach their tasking as agreed to in the RFP and the contract. That will get you all together, and then you can proceed forward from there.
And won't someone from the contractor be attending all the subcommittee meetings automatically?
We have asked that as a part of the RFP, there is a request that they work closely and define how they're going to work closely with the technical advisory committee, the chief resilience officer, and my position. So they are supposed to be addressing that as we move forward in their offers.
Okay, because I agree. I think we should have someone from the contractor here ASAP.
Yep.
And that way they can pull together. And Bob, I guess the answer, as Ann said, is we'll just kind of stick to the schedule of having them maybe do a culminating presentation in August. But if we find during this process as a whole better for them to do it earlier, we'll do the switcheroonie. That's that. We'll put them earlier in the process. Thank you for raising that. Okay. All right. The last thing on our agenda is to set up our monthly meetings. Does this time on Monday mornings work for, all right, does this time on Monday morning not work for anyone? I don't hear any shouts and screams. Okay, let's plan on Monday morning, 10 o'clock. And this is, where are we? We are on the what week of the month are we on? Sorry, I have to bring you on. This is the end of the month. So maybe if we do the last Monday of the month, does that work for everyone? 10 a.m. And Laura, can we send that out in our, excuse me, in our next email? When we send the minutes out, we'll make a note of that. Last Monday of the month, 10 a.m. And if there's anything huge going on, we'll have to visit that then later on, but that at least gives us something to start with. All right. Okay. Thank you all for your time, your patience, your understanding, as we are these guinea pigs doing these electronic meetings. So we really appreciate it. And for all of your help with this effort. This is important, and look forward to seeing you in a month.
You have to make a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. Hello. Does anyone move that we adjourn?
So moved.
That was Clyde, Chrisman, Laura, or Kurt. Does anyone second?
Bob Crum, second.
Thank you, Bob. All right. We have to do a vote. Laura.
All right. Hold on a second.
I really think it could be a voice vote,
Yeah, all right, yeah, who's going to oppose
not
it?
torture everyone.
Yeah.
Without objection.
Everyone in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. We're done. Have a great day, y'all. Thank you.